My girlfriend dared me to check her phone, but I wish I never did. The dare came out of nowhere on a Thursday night while we were watching some forgettable Netflix show. Amber had been scrolling through her phone for the past 20 minutes, smiling at something on the screen, and when I asked what was funny, she just shrugged. Then she looked up with this challenging expression I'd seen before when she was about to prove a point. You know what? Check my phone. Go ahead. I have nothing to hide. She tossed it onto my lap like it was nothing, like she was throwing down a gauntlet made of glass and secrets. I laughed it off at first, because this felt like a trap. 3 years together had taught me that women don't just hand over their phones unless they're either completely innocent or playing some kind of game I didn't understand yet. But Amber kept insisting, saying she was tired of me acting paranoid every time she texted someone. I wasn't paranoid, or at least I didn't think I was, but maybe she had a point. Maybe I was reading too much into her late nights at the gym and her sudden interest in happy hours with coworkers I'd never met. So I picked up her phone. The screen unlocked with my thumbprint, because she'd added it months ago, one of those relationship milestones that felt significant at the time. A gesture of trust. Now it felt like an invitation to something I wasn't prepared for. Her text messages were boring, exactly what you'd expect. Conversations with her mom about weekend plans, a group chat with her college friends discussing someone's engagement party, work messages about project deadlines. Nothing suspicious. Her Instagram was the same perfectly curated feed of brunch photos and gym selfies she posted religiously. Her email was work stuff and shopping receipts. I was about to hand it back when something made me pause. Maybe it was the way she was watching me from the corner of her eye while pretending to focus on the TV. Maybe it was how her knee was bouncing, that nervous tell she had when she was anxious about something. Whatever it was, I decided to dig deeper. I opened her photo gallery. Recent photos showed the two of us at her sister's wedding last month, some sunset shots from our anniversary dinner, a few selfies she'd taken in the bathroom mirror at work. Scrolling back further showed more of the same mundane documentation of daily life. Then I remembered the recently deleted folder. Everyone forgets about that folder. The digital graveyard where photos go to die slowly over 30 days before permanent erasure. I'd deleted embarrassing screenshots and accidental photos of my feet plenty of times, only to realize later they were still technically on my phone. Most people never check that folder. I tapped it, expecting maybe some unflattering photos she'd deleted or failed attempts at the perfect Instagram shot. What I found made my stomach drop through the floor. Pregnancy tests. Multiple positive pregnancy tests photographed against bathroom counters I recognized as ours. The first photo was dated 6 months ago. The stick showed 2 clear pink lines, the universal symbol for life beginning whether you wanted it to or not. The next photo was dated 4 months ago. Another positive test, different brand this time. The third was from 2 months ago. Same result. 3 positive pregnancy tests over 6 months, all deleted but not permanently erased, all hidden in a folder Amber probably assumed I'd never find. My hands started shaking because this made no sense. Amber and I had talked about kids maybe someday in the distant future, but we weren't trying. She was on birth control, or at least that's what she'd told me. But more importantly, and this was the detail that made everything else impossible, I'd had a vasectomy 2 years ago, before I even met Amber. A decision I'd made after my ex-wife and I divorced, when I'd already had my 2 kids and knew I was done with that chapter of my life. Amber knew I had kids from my previous marriage, but she didn't know about the vasectomy. I'd never told her because it never came up. The impossibility of these photos hit me like a physical blow. If Amber was pregnant 3 times in 6 months and I couldn't have gotten her pregnant, then someone else had. Multiple someone else's, potentially. But why photograph the tests? Why keep the photos at all? I kept scrolling through the recently deleted folder, my brain trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. There were more photos mixed in with the pregnancy tests. Screenshots of text conversations. I zoomed in on one. The conversation was between Amber and someone saved in her phone as Dr. Williams. The messages were clinical at first, discussing appointment times and medical procedures. But as I scrolled through the screenshots, the tone changed. Dr. Williams became Danny, the same Danny she'd mentioned casually a few times as an ex-boyfriend from college, someone she'd stayed friends with, no big deal. Except these messages weren't friendly. They were intimate, planning meetups when I was at work, discussing how the procedure went, followed by a heart emoji from Danny and a crying face from Amber. I felt sick. The procedure. She was talking about an abortion. I scrolled further back in the screenshots and found more conversations, these with someone named Kyle. Messages about meeting at the gym, working out together, grabbing drinks after. Then a message from Amber saying she needed to tell him something important, followed by a screenshot of a positive pregnancy test. Kyle's response was cold. That's your problem, not mine. Take care of it. More screenshots showed Amber asking him to at least help pay for it, Kyle blocking her number. My throat felt tight. My girlfriend of 3 years had been sleeping with her ex-boyfriend Danny, with someone named Kyle from her gym, and based on the dating of these photos and messages, probably others. She'd gotten pregnant multiple times. She'd gotten abortions multiple times. And I'd known nothing about any of it. The betrayal was comprehensive, surgical in its completeness. Every late night at the gym, every happy hour with coworkers, every weekend she'd said she was visiting her sister. All of it had been lies stacked on top of lies, but something still didn't make sense. Why dare me to check her phone if all of this was in there? Even deleted, even hidden in a folder she thought I wouldn't check. It was still risky, unless she wanted me to find it, unless this was some kind of test. I looked up at Amber, who was still pretending to watch TV, and I saw her watching me through her peripheral vision, waiting. She'd been waiting to see if I'd actually go through her phone, to see if I'd check beyond the surface level. This dare wasn't about proving her innocence. It was about gauging how thorough I was. I kept my face neutral and kept scrolling, found more screenshots, these from a conversation with someone named Alex, messages about meeting for coffee, complaining about their respective partners, escalating into plans to meet at a hotel, a screenshot of Alex saying his wife was out of town, Amber responding with a winky face. This had happened 3 weeks ago while I was visiting my kids for the weekend. The timeline was beginning to form a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. Then I found the document. It was a photo of a typed list, probably from her laptop, titled simply Planning. The first item read, Establish timeline for fake pregnancy announcement. The second, Stop taking birth control without telling David. That was me, David. My name on a list of tasks like I was some kind of project she was managing. The third item, Determine which donor produces baby that most resembles David. Physical characteristics to prioritize. The fourth, Schedule final procedure before announcement. The list went on. A step-by-step plan for trapping me with a baby that wasn't mine. My vision blurred. She'd been practicing, getting pregnant by different men, comparing results, planning which one to use for her endgame. The abortions weren't failures or mistakes. They were trial runs. She was testing which affair partner would produce a child that could pass as mine. Danny was tall, with dark hair like me. Kyle was shorter but had my eye color. Alex, based on one photo I found, had my build. She'd been collecting genetic material like some kind of sociopath running a breeding experiment, and I couldn't say anything. Not yet. If I confronted her now, she'd have time to spin a story, delete evidence, turn this around on me somehow. I'd learned from my divorce that you never show your cards until you're ready to play them all at once. So I kept scrolling, my hand steady now, my face a mask of casual interest. Found more photos, screenshots of her conversations with a group chat called The Project, which included 2 phone numbers I didn't recognize. The messages were coordinating her affairs, discussing which men were still useful, laughing about how clueless their partners were. One message from Amber read, David suspects nothing. The vasectomy makes this perfect because he'll never question paternity if I time it right. He's already talking about maybe having another kid eventually. My blood went cold. She knew. Somehow, she knew about my vasectomy. I scrolled frantically through more messages and found it. A screenshot of my medical records from 2 years ago. She'd gone through my files while I was at work, found the documentation, and used it as part of her plan. She knew I couldn't get her pregnant, which meant she knew any pregnancy she claimed was mine would be believed, because I wouldn't suspect it wasn't possible. The genius of it made me want to throw up. If she announced a pregnancy, I'd be thrilled. I've been talking lately about maybe reversing the vasectomy, maybe having one more kid before I got too old. Those conversations had happened organically, or so I thought. But looking at the dates in these messages, Amber had been planting seeds for months, bringing up stories about friends having babies, showing me cute videos of infants, talking about how good I was with my kids from my first marriage. She'd been manipulating me into wanting a child so that when she announced her fake pregnancy, I'd be emotionally invested before any questions could arise. I found more proof in the messages. Screenshots of fertility clinic websites, research on paternity testing and how to avoid it, a message to someone named Lisa asking about home paternity tests and whether they could be faked. Lisa's response included a link to a website selling fake positive paternity tests. The operation was sophisticated. Amber had thought of everything, except she'd forgotten to permanently delete the evidence from her recently deleted folder. My 15-minute scroll through her phone had uncovered a conspiracy that spanned months, involved at least 3 affair partners, and culminated in a plan to trap me with another man's child. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. I'd lived with this woman for 2 years. We'd talked about getting married. I'd introduced her to my kids. My parents loved her, and the entire time, she'd been running a scam that would have destroyed my life if it succeeded. I closed the photo app and opened her notes app, looking for anything else. Found a document dated 3 days ago titled Announcement Script. It laid out exactly how she'd tell me about the pregnancy. She'd do it on a Saturday morning, make me breakfast, act nervous but excited. She'd show me a positive test and watch my reaction. If I was happy, she'd move forward with the plan. If I was suspicious, she had contingencies. A fake miscarriage if I demanded a paternity test. Emotional breakdown about stress causing the loss. Every angle covered. Reading her notes felt like watching a movie where the villain explains their master plan, except the villain was the woman sleeping next to me every night. The woman who said she loved me. The woman I'd been planning a future with while she planned my destruction. Because that's what this was. Not just cheating, which would have been bad enough. This was calculated entrapment with permanent consequences. Child support for 18 years. Legal rights to custody. Connection to Amber for the rest of my life. All based on a lie she'd spent months perfecting. I set the phone down gently and looked at Amber. She was still pretending to watch TV, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was waiting for me to say something, to either confirm I'd found nothing or reveal I'd discovered her secrets. I smiled and said everything looked fine, nothing suspicious. She physically relaxed, her shoulders dropping, her knee stopping its nervous bounce. "See?" she said. "I told you there was nothing to worry about. You need to trust me more." The audacity of that statement made me want to laugh. Trust her more, while I was holding evidence of her planning to trap me with another man's baby. But I just nodded and handed back her phone. She took it and immediately started texting someone, probably one of her accomplices in The Project, telling them I'd taken the bait and found nothing. I watched her fingers fly across the screen and wondered how I'd ever thought I knew this person. How I'd shared a bed with a stranger who saw me as nothing more than a financial mark. That night, I couldn't sleep. Amber dozed off around 11, her phone charging on her nightstand, her breathing steady and peaceful like someone without a conscience. I lay there staring at the ceiling, running through everything I'd learned. 3 pregnancies, 3 abortions, multiple affair partners, a detailed plan to fake a pregnancy and trap me. Evidence of identity theft by accessing my medical records. Conspiracy with at least 2 other people to commit fraud. Every angle I examined made it worse. By morning, I'd made my decision. I got up before Amber, went to my home office, and started documenting everything. I couldn't take screenshots of her phone without her knowing, but I could recreate what I'd seen. I wrote out timelines, dates, names, drew connections between the different men and the different pregnancies, documented the planning list verbatim, wrote down every message I could remember from the project group chat. The evidence would be my word against hers, but I'd learned enough in my divorce to know that detailed contemporaneous notes carried weight. Then I called my lawyer, the same one who'd handled my divorce and knew my history. I explained the situation, everything I'd found, everything Amber was planning. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said we needed to meet immediately, not at his office, somewhere neutral. He suggested a coffee shop downtown, said he'd be there in an hour. I agreed and hung up, my hands shaking again now that I was taking action. Amber woke up around 8, earlier than usual for a Saturday. She came into my office wearing one of my old t-shirts, looking sleepy and vulnerable. I almost felt guilty for what I was about to do. Almost. Then I remembered the photos of positive pregnancy tests from men who weren't me, and the guilt evaporated. "Morning, babe," she said. "Want to grab breakfast?" I told her I had some work to catch up on, deadline Monday. She pouted, but accepted it, said she'd make herself something and go to the gym later. I met my lawyer at the coffee shop at 9:30, showed him everything I'd written down. He took notes on his tablet, his expression getting darker with each detail. When I finished, he sat back and exhaled. "This is bad," he said. "Worse than I thought when you called. If she succeeds in this scheme, you're looking at 18 years of child support for a kid that isn't yours. Even if you prove later the child isn't biologically yours, courts don't always care. If you act as the father, you become the father legally in many jurisdictions. That possibility made my chest tight. I'd be trapped forever, connected to Amber through a child that came from one of her affairs, subject to custody agreements and parenting plans and every other legal entanglement that comes with shared children. My lawyer tapped his tablet and pulled up precedent cases. Showed me situations where men had been held financially responsible for children they'd proven weren't biologically theirs because they'd accepted paternity initially. The law prioritized the child's welfare over biological truth, which meant I could pay for another man's kid until it turned 18. "We need evidence," my lawyer said. "Your notes are helpful, but not enough. We need screenshots of those messages, copies of those photos, proof of her accessing your medical records. Without that, it's your word against hers if this goes to court." The problem was Amber's phone. She never left it unattended. She took it everywhere, even into the bathroom. Getting back into her recently deleted folder would be nearly impossible now that she thought I'd already checked and found nothing, unless I could get her to show me again, or get her to slip up. My lawyer suggested a forensic tech he knew, someone who could potentially recover deleted data from phones or computers remotely if we could get temporary access. But that would require getting Amber's phone for at least 30 minutes without her noticing. The solution came to me during the drive home. Amber's laptop. She used it constantly, synced to her phone for messages and photos. If I could access her laptop while she was at the gym, I could download everything before she realized what was happening. I got home to find Amber getting ready for the gym like she'd said. She was wearing tight leggings and a sports bra, her gym outfit that I used to find attractive and now just reminded me of Kyle. She kissed me goodbye, said she'd be back in 2 hours, left her laptop open on the kitchen counter charging. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed the laptop. Her cloud was synced and logged in. I opened it and navigated to her photo library. Everything was there, all of it. The recently deleted folder on her phone had synced to her computer before she'd permanently erased anything. I started taking screenshots frantically. The pregnancy tests, the messages with Danny, Kyle, and Alex, the planning document, the announcement script. Every piece of evidence was right there, backed up to her cloud storage because she'd never considered someone would access her computer while she was gone. I emailed everything to myself, creating a paper trail that couldn't be deleted. Then I found something worse, a video file labeled insurance. I clicked it, and my stomach turned. It was footage from our bedroom, filmed from an angle that suggested a hidden camera. The video showed me sleeping, but it was edited, spliced with footage I didn't recognize. Footage that made it look like I was awake and active when I knew I'd been unconscious. The implication was clear. If I ever questioned the pregnancy or demanded a paternity test, Amber had manufactured evidence that could be used to suggest domestic abuse or violence. The video was sophisticated, well-edited, convincing. It showed me apparently looming over Amber while she cowered in bed, then cut to her with what looked like bruises that I knew were makeup. The timestamp in the corner said it was from 3 weeks ago, a night I remembered because I'd taken cold medicine and passed out early. She'd staged an entire scene while I was medicated and unconscious. Created evidence of abuse that never happened. Insurance, she'd called it. Protection in case her plan went sideways. I downloaded the video and every other file in that folder. Found more insurance policies, photos of her with bruises that looked professionally done, screenshots of messages I'd supposedly sent, except I'd never written any of them. She'd either spoofed my number or created fake screenshots that would pass a casual inspection. Each piece of insurance was designed to destroy me if I ever challenged her. If I fought the paternity claim, she'd show evidence of abuse. If I left her, she'd claim domestic violence and get a restraining order. The trap was total. Every angle covered. Every contingency planned. Amber hadn't just been preparing to fake a pregnancy. She'd been preparing to control my entire life. The scope of it made me dizzy. I sat there staring at her laptop screen, looking at dozens of files that proved her guilt, and realized I'd been living with a sociopath for 3 years. This wasn't a woman having affairs. This was a predator who'd identified me as prey. My phone buzzed. A text from Amber saying her workout was running long. She'd be another hour. I had time. I called the forensic tech my lawyer had mentioned. Explained I needed everything on this computer documented professionally, with timestamps and chain of custody that would hold up in court. He said he could be there in 20 minutes. I agreed and sent him the address. Told him to park down the street and come to the back door so the neighbors wouldn't see. The tech arrived exactly on time. A quiet guy in his 30s, carrying an equipment bag. He set up in my office and started creating a forensic image of Amber's computer while explaining what he was doing. He was capturing every file, every deleted item, every cached web page and cookie, building a complete picture of Amber's digital life that couldn't be disputed or deleted later. The process took 45 minutes. He left through the back door with 2 USB drives containing everything, promising my lawyer would have copies by end of business day. I closed Amber's laptop and put it back exactly where she'd left it, erased my browser history on my own computer just in case she checked, made sure nothing looked disturbed. Then I sat on the couch and waited for her to come home, my heart pounding, my mind racing through what came next. The evidence was secured. My lawyer was preparing a legal strategy, but I still had to live with Amber until we executed the plan. Still had to pretend I didn't know. Still had to share a bed with someone plotting my destruction. She came home an hour later, sweaty and cheerful. Talked about her workout, how Kyle had helped her with her form on squats. Kyle, the same Kyle whose baby she'd aborted 4 months ago. The casual way she mentioned his name made my skin crawl. I nodded and smiled and asked about her day like everything was normal. She kissed me and headed for the shower. I sat there listening to the water run, thinking about how she'd probably been with Kyle before coming home, how the workout story was likely a lie covering another affair. That night she wanted to have sex. I couldn't do it. Made an excuse about being tired, work stress. She seemed annoyed but didn't push it. I lay awake again after she fell asleep, staring at the ceiling, counting the days until my lawyer would have everything prepared. He'd said a week, maybe 2. Time to file for a restraining order based on her accessing my medical records without consent. Time to get ahead of any false allegations she might make. Time to end this before she could execute her plan. The next morning, Amber announced she needed to stop taking her birth control because it was making her feel weird. Side effects, she said. We'd need to use condoms for a while until she figured out alternatives. I agreed too quickly, and she gave me a strange look, like she'd expected me to argue or ask questions. I realized my mistake immediately. The old me, the me who didn't know about her plan, would have suggested she talk to her doctor first, would have worried about unplanned pregnancy. But the me who knew about the vasectomy had no reason to be concerned. I covered by saying I trusted her judgment about her own body. She seemed to accept that and moved on, but I'd seen the flicker of suspicion in her eyes. She was watching me more carefully now, looking for signs that I knew something. I had to be perfect in my performance, or she'd realize I'd found more than I'd let on during the phone check. The pressure of maintaining the lie was exhausting. Every conversation was a minefield. Every interaction required calculation. My lawyer called on Monday, He'd received the forensic evidence and was reviewing it with a criminal attorney he trusted. The fake domestic abuse evidence was potentially prosecutable. The identity theft of my medical records definitely was. The planning documents showed premeditation. If we played this right, Amber wouldn't just lose me. She'd face criminal charges. I asked if we had enough to press charges now. He said we were close but wanted to wait for one more thing. He wanted to confirm the paternity of the aborted pregnancies. That seemed impossible until he explained. The clinic where Amber had her procedures was required to keep tissue samples for 30 days. If we moved fast, we could potentially get DNA evidence from the first abortion 6 months ago. With a court order, we could compare that DNA to Danny, Kyle, and Alex. Prove that Amber had been pregnant by her affair partners. Prove the pattern of behavior. Cement the case so thoroughly she couldn't talk her way out of it. But we needed to move fast. After 30 days, the tissue was disposed of. We filed the emergency court order on Wednesday. By Friday, we had DNA confirmation. The first pregnancy had been Kyle's. The second was Danny's. The third, the most recent, was someone we hadn't identified yet, which meant there were even more affair partners than I'd discovered. The evidence was overwhelming. My lawyer filed for the restraining order that afternoon. Amber was served papers at her office by a sheriff's deputy. She came home in a rage. I'd moved out that morning while she was at work, taken everything I needed, left a note saying my lawyer would be in touch. I was staying at a hotel when she started calling. 15 calls in 10 minutes, voicemails screaming about how I couldn't do this, how she'd ruin me, how I'd regret leaving her. The threats were detailed and specific. She'd tell everyone I was abusive. She'd get a restraining order against me. She'd make sure I never saw my kids again. Every threat she'd prepared as insurance was now being deployed in real time. But I was recording everything. My lawyer had set me up with an app that captured all calls and texts. Every threat Amber made was being documented. Every lie was being preserved. When she finally realized I wasn't answering, she switched tactics. Started sending apologetic texts. She'd made mistakes, but she loved me. We could work through this. She'd go to therapy. Whatever I needed, she'd do it. The manipulation was transparent now that I knew what she was capable of. The criminal charges were filed Monday morning. Identity theft for accessing my medical records, fraud for the fake domestic abuse evidence, conspiracy with the other members of the project who'd helped her plan the fake pregnancy scheme. The news spread fast. Amber's work found out. Her friends found out. Her family found out. The carefully constructed image she'd maintained crumbled in days. People she'd convinced I was controlling and jealous learned the truth, saw the evidence, realized they'd been manipulated too. Danny, Kyle, and Alex were all contacted by police. Danny initially denied everything until confronted with the DNA evidence. Then he broke completely, admitted to the affair, claimed he didn't know about the plan to trap me. Kyle was married and his wife left him within hours of finding out. Alex lost his job when his employer learned he'd been having affairs on company time. The ripples spread outward, destroying multiple lives that had orbited around Amber's schemes. The trial took 6 months. Amber's defense argued she'd made mistakes, but hadn't committed crimes. The jury disagreed. They convicted her on all counts. The judge gave her 18 months in county jail, followed by 3 years probation. Not enough, in my opinion, but more than many men in my situation ever see. The restraining order was made permanent. She was forbidden from contacting me or anyone in my family, forbidden from posting about me on social media, forbidden from coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. But the real justice wasn't the criminal case. It was watching her life disintegrate the way she'd planned to disintegrate mine. She lost her job, lost her friends, lost her family's respect. Her mother called me crying, apologizing for raising someone capable of such cruelty. Amber's sister reached out to say she'd cut contact completely. The social consequences were more devastating than the legal ones. She'd become a cautionary tale. The woman who tried to trap a man with a fake pregnancy and got caught. My kids asked about Amber after she disappeared from our lives. I told them the truth in age-appropriate terms. Sometimes people pretend to be something they're not. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices. They accepted it better than I'd expected. Resilient in the way kids are when adults handle difficult things honestly. My ex-wife surprisingly sent me a message saying she'd always had bad feelings about Amber. Wished she'd said something sooner. I appreciated the sentiment even though it didn't change anything. The vasectomy that Amber had discovered and planned to use against me ended up being the detail that saved me. If I'd been able to get her pregnant, I might never have questioned a pregnancy announcement, might have raised another man's child, paid for it, loved it, never knowing the truth until it was far too late. The medical procedure I'd gotten after my divorce, thinking I was done having kids, had been a shield I'd never known I needed. Sometimes the decisions we make for simple reasons end up having profound consequences we never anticipated. A year later, I started dating again, cautiously, with the kind of wariness that comes from being burned badly. I was upfront about my past, about Amber, about the vasectomy, about my trust issues. Most women understood. Some ran. The ones who stayed were patient, willing to move slowly, understanding that healing takes time. I met someone eventually who'd been through her own nightmare with a manipulative ex. We compared scars, traded stories, built something real on a foundation of mutual damage and hard-won wisdom. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. After Amber, honest was everything. Appreciate you watching this far. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe so you won't miss the next story.